Happy Friday, everyone. It is April the 19th. This is Connor Barnett here, head of content at nooffseason.com. Along the side, me is Paul Hickey. Welcome back to another Overflow Show, the premium podcast dedicated for you guys, helping you level up your sports card investment practices. Of course, we want to thank each and every one of you guys for the fantastic support, and we are looking forward to killing this episode for you guys and providing as much value as we can. Guys, be sure to check out that updated member dashboard feature via the top right button after you sign into nooffseason.com as a premium member. And as always, look to utilize Sports Card School as a tool no matter what your current situation is when it comes to flipping sports cards. Also, guys, be sure to check out our formula-based sports card rankings at nooffseason.com, where you can see a card-by-card breakdown of where you can make the highest return on investments for both raw-to-grade and pre-graded prints. And, of course, if you are a premium member listening to the podcast wondering how you can get your questions answered in next week's Overflow Show, just head over to nooffseason.com/ask. That is nooffseason.com/ask, and we will let you know once we've received your submission and when it will be answered. Typically, that will be the same week's Overflow Show. Paul, with that being said, let's go ahead and hop into things. I want to know how you're doing this morning. I'm pumped to get another Overflow up in and get some valuable information out for the peeps.
Yeah, great to see you, Connor. Great job at nooffseason.com with everything you've been working on. And I'm excited for the Overflow Show, man. Premium pod time. This is my favorite time of the week. We get to answer member questions. I want to say what's up to the nooffseason.com fam. Thank you for being here. Thanks for being a premium member. We've been putting a lot of time and effort into the formula-based rankings. Still got all the player profiles and still got all the great content elsewhere on the site. Sports Card School. There will be quite a few new lessons dropping in May, and then we are actually going to go back throughout the remainder of the year and update all of the earlier lessons that were dropped earlier in the year. So stay tuned and stay subscribed for more great content at Sports Card School. That's that and the sports card rankings, the formula-based rankings, and the Overflow Show right here on the Premium Pod are definitely the meat and potatoes of the entire membership. So be sure to always watch this show, even if you don't ask a question, because we're always going to address not only a lot of housekeeping things, but a lot of sports card strategy for you to make money flipping sports cards.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and run through, Paul, who we are going to hear from today and give feedback for. We're going to start things off with Bo B, who's got an update for us. Then we're heading over to Matt T, then Skeeter R, Brian B, Peter M, Ian T, Glenn G, Mark D, Anthony S, Jim C, Michael C, and then we'll round things off, last but not least, with Sam P. Paul, let's go ahead and hop right on into things, starting with our guy, Bo B. Like I said, he's got an update for us. Says, happy Saturday at the time of submitting the question. Following up on this to report great news. If you guys have listened to the recent Overflow Show episodes, he had a Braden Taylor print that had some ink smear on the back. He says, the Braden Taylor card cleaned up like a gem. Attached some photos for us. Says, thanks again for the reference. I followed up with Kurt. He's referring to Kurt's Card Care, and let him know how great the experience was, and reiterated that I was referred to him through your show to give credit. Says, have a great weekend. Paul, I love getting updates like this. I think this is fantastic news. Shout out to Kurt's Card Care for the awesome service, and of course, we're having a great product that helped Bo out here. We need to be looking to see what all Kurt's got for us, because I feel like you and Kurt have had some good conversations, and then obviously the members that we've sent his way, they have good things to say as well.
Yeah, the thing I like about Kurt, and we don't have any affiliation with Kurt, like there's no deals, there's no partnership, like we don't get paid to say this. Kurt is just a genuinely good guy. The thing I like about him is that like he stays true to what he does and what he doesn't do. So basically what he does, for all of you out there that are curious, is he just provides products. He just sells products that help you restore, clean, whatever you want to call it, cards, and then it's up to you to determine what to do with those cards. Like, I'm curious, Bo, are you having this graded? I'm glad you had great experience with Kurt. I think a lot of people use Kurt's products just to simply restore their cards or make them look better, not necessarily to grade them. As we know here at the nooffseason.com fam, we know we're trying to make money. So my assumption is that we would all use Kurt's products to hopefully enhance a grade potentially of a card. I will say, Bo, credit to you, man. This is super relevant to me personally, because I have actually bought cards with the ink on the back of them, and then I will look very, very carefully on my eBay listing so that I don't buy cards with ink on the back of them. Typically, it happens with these Bowman products, football, basketball, university chrome, and the baseball now. But I bought a Drake May auto with a print mark on the back, and I just had it graded at PSA on purpose. I didn't even think to use Kurt's Card Care. In the future, I will definitely use it. So I think next steps, honestly, Connor, is I think I'm just going to buy some of Kurt's spray next time I need to maybe try to do something like this and see if it works. But yeah, definitely cool to have guys like Kurt in the hobby. Awesome to have Bo not only in the hobby, but a main member of the nooffseason.com fam. Really appreciate you reporting that back. I think that's a perfect example, Connor, and everyone else, of the value that the community brings, the value that our content brings. So big thank you to all of you out there as nooffseason.com premium subscribers. We're part of something special here, helping each other out. So thanks to the fam, and thanks to Bo for that.
Totally. Let's kick it over now to Matt T. Says, "What's up, fam? It's Matt, the cardboard preacher, here with a question to make sure I'm understanding the new eBay PSA Vault merger." Says, "It seems that this is a negative for sellers because eBay did not charge seller fees for items in the vault, but once it converts to PSA, the seller fees will start up. Am I understanding this correctly? I do believe I am. What are your thoughts? And thanks for all the hard work." Paul, you've got some information ready to rock and roll on this to break it down here for our guy Matt / the cardboard preacher. Go ahead and take it away.
Hey, Matt, first of all, great to see you once again here on the premium pod. And I'm just going to quickly repeat this back just because sometimes it helps my brain answer the question. It seems this is a negative for sellers because eBay did not charge seller fees for items in the vault. But once it converts to PSA, the seller fees will start up. Am I understanding this correctly? I believe I am. I believe you are. But I will say this. What I don't know for sure, but what I think is that they weren't charging seller fees for the first couple of years of the vault. And I know this out of my own experience because I bought items, put them in the eBay vault, and sold them directly from the eBay vault, and fees were not taken out. So I can validate that. However, what I do also know is that they had said for a long time that sometime in the spring of 2024 that there were going to be fees. And so what I thought at the time, I thought that was very mysterious verbiage by eBay. And what I thought at the time was that these fees were going to be eBay fees, like they were going to be implementing eBay fees. So I always knew that because they had always publicized that on their vault page. And anytime I talked about the vault, I tried to communicate that. However, it's very, very easy for people to assume, okay, well, they haven't charged fees. That's going to be in perpetuity. That's typically never the case with the vault service that's new, even for a company like eBay, because if you look at like PWCC and other vaults, they've always had promotions. Collector's Vault had the same thing, for example. And they'd always had promotions where it's like, use our vault, free fees for a certain amount of time, then there's going to be fees. So I always knew there were going to be fees. To me, this actually doesn't change what I thought was going to happen anyway, because when I unpack, if you go to psacard.com/info/consignment-rates, okay, that's PSA's link to the eBay rates, which I'm sharing on my screen right now. So it says, coming soon, competitive auction rates on the world's largest collectibles marketplace, being eBay, the ability to list from the PSA vault, which is formerly the eBay vault, immediately after PSA authentication and grading. So this would be where, well, we talked about this on the Sports Card Strategy show, where you get your card graded at PSA. There's an option to keep it in the eBay vault. Boom, you do that. You're actually saving on all that shipping that we talked about. And it's saying it's listing the fees. So for an item under $100, there's a seller fee of 16%. For items between $100 and $499, there's a seller fee of 14%. As the item gets higher in value, between $500 and $999, 13%. And it goes up all the way up to $5,000 plus 7%. But the fees go from 16 to 14 to 13 to 10 to 9 to 7. Okay. To me, those are similar to what you already pay right now selling on eBay. So to me, this doesn't really change what I knew and thought was going to happen anyway had eBay kept the vault themselves. And B, it doesn't appear that PSA is adding any additional fees to go directly from PSA grading into the eBay vault, which is going to be called the PSA vault, obviously, and then sell on eBay from the PSA vault. So this to me is not a negative at all. I think a lot of these situations, Connor, depend on your own situation and your perspective. I think what I'm learning here in year 4 of doing what I'm doing here at nooffseason.com, and I freaking love my job. But what I'm continuously learning is perspective is everything on a lot of these things. And we'll hit on that a little bit later on in the show. But I can see where people would look at this and go, oh, well, there weren't fees and now there are fees. But I don't know, unless I'm missing something, which I always say that because I could be missing something. I don't think this is a negative in my opinion, my perspective.
Love it. Yeah, I think that's a great breakdown there. It's just going to come down to as long as if those are the same fees, right, then Paul, then it just comes down to the fact that it's going to be kind of in more lockstep and it's more efficient process, right? So if you can expect the same fees there, then I think it's absolutely a W, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. But I mean, just to clarify real quick, like there's all these different use cases, right? One use case that used to be in place as it was the eBay vault would be buying a card on eBay, immediately sending it to your eBay vault and then selling it out of the eBay vault. You'll still be able to do that under PSA ownership as far as I know. I wouldn't see a reason why they would take that away because that's one of the major benefits. Now there's going to be fees as a seller. Well, there would have been fees had that been the eBay vault. They just hadn't added them yet. It was during their promotional period. They were going to end their promotional period, or maybe they knew they were going to sell to PSA. Either way, there was going to be fees. And they said that. Another use case that didn't exist. So to me, that's a wash, right? That use case. Another use case that didn't exist that now exists is the ability to sell from to grade a card at PSA. And if you're anything like me, guys and gals out there, like I'm grading, I haven't actually done the math, but I'm grading like thousands of cards a year, basically at this point. Like 1,000 plus cards a year are being graded by me at PSA. And so now you're in a situation where before, if I wanted to ship them to the collector's vault to save on the shipping, they would have been stuck in the MFing collector's vault for me to sell on the collector's marketplace, which blows, or golden auctions, which I'm never going to do because I don't have a card. I'd never have a card of that magnitude. And even if I did, I'd probably still sell it on eBay anyway. Probably more on that to come in future content. So now you have a scenario that didn't exist before, which is the best of all worlds, where you can grade at PSA, immediately ship them to the new PSA/eBay vault and sell directly on eBay. Now you're still saving on the shipping, but yeah, you're going to pay some seller's fees, which you would have paid on eBay anyway had you shipped them back to yourself and sold them on eBay. So that's where I don't get that this is a negative. I feel like there is a situation now that exists that didn't exist before. And I appreciate the question from Matt, the Cardboard Preacher. I got a little preachy there at the end in honor of Matt, the Cardboard Preacher. What do we got next, Connor?
Up next, we're rolling. First of all, shout out to Matt and shout out to, shout out to Matt there for the question. I think that this is going to be an interesting way. Obviously, Paul, with how frequently, I know you're going to be testing this out quickly. So we're going to be bringing content to you guys in terms of how much more beneficial this can be for you guys versus not. Of course, we'll give honest opinions on how things go, but hopefully they do turn out well. Rolling along, Paul, we're looking at Skeeter R's question. Says, with Caitlin Clark bringing a lot of attention to the Indiana Fever, is this a good time to buy the Alea Boston rookie? She was Rookie of the Year, and I would think would get a lot of attention playing with Caitlin Clark in Indiana. Her Prism Silvers are $10 to $15 raw right now. Feels like this may be a player people are not on with Clark and the other new rookie class getting so much attention. Paul, I'm going to give my quick breakdown and thoughts, and then I'll let you piggyback, disagree, agree, whatever you wish here. Skeeter, I'm going to look at this from two different angles. We're going to look at this from a raw angle in terms of buying raw and grading at PSA. Then we'll also look at buying pre-graded. So starting off with Raw, I went ahead and threw this in the formula. Now, unfortunately, she does not have data on market movers yet, but I was able to find data on eBay completed sales as well as 130point.com. So the formula does indeed like buying her Prism Silver in Raw and grading this at PSA. So this is the data that I was able to find just for your awareness. If you look at silver sales, on the 10th of April, it sold for $18. On the 14th, $12, and on the 17th, $20. In terms of PSA 10, it has sold for $85 on February 22nd, $61 on February 25th, and then on April 7th, it sold for $99. PSA 9s, $20 on the 11th of February, $30 on the 30th of March, and $60 on the 5th of April. So that's the data that I use kind of as sales to kind of find recent averages. So this is what the formula split out at us. So this card does gem at a 69% clip. The formula states that if you buy this card raw, on average, getting graded at PSA, you could get a return of investment of 36%. You need to invest nearly $2,800 on her raw silvers, which obviously could be difficult depending on how many you can get your hands on. But you need to invest about $2,800 if you wanted to make $1,000. But a 36% return on investment obviously is a good clip there. So, Paul, I do think that this is an interesting play to make raw to grade. In terms of buying pre-graded, however, this is just my 2 cents. I'm personally not big on the whole bleeding the hype theory when we're relying on someone else's impact to push the prices of another player's cards. And then, Paul, I think if you pair this with, generally speaking, less interest in the WNBA, albeit it is a growing sport right now and obviously is going to continue to grow, which I think is fantastic. Shout out to Caitlin Clark and other players. But if you do add that, I think you're really stretching and adding layers to your process in order to make profits, hoping that this card is going to spike in pricing. I'm not saying you can't make money here buying pre-graded. I would just rather save up a bit more cash flow and invest maybe in Caitlin Clark herself when a down period presents itself. Also, something to consider, Paul, is that the WNBA does start. The preseason starts on May the 3rd, and the regular season starts on the 14th. So in terms of looking for sell markers or preseason hype, whatever it may be, you'd have to do this play very quickly. I don't know what other markers you'd be looking for throughout the season, especially if we're like, I guess if she goes crazy, yeah, but assuming that Caitlin Clark's going to be as ball dominant as she is in the WNBA as she was in college, that could almost hurt Boston's chances. So that's just my 2 cents there. The formula does really like the raw to grade play, but don't know that I love buying pre-graded for this option.
Man, you nailed that, Connor. Like, the punchline here is exactly what you just said. Like the pre-graded option, I would fade. I think the real money here is in the total breakdown that you gave here on the raw to grade. And then you make a good point. Like, is there enough time to do that before the start of the WNBA season, where there's probably going to be the most hype around this Fever team? So I would say that's my final answer for Skeeter, is like the raw to grade is the play. I would fade the pre-graded. I will say this real quick. Skeeter, I love where your head's at in general, my friend, because basically what you're doing here is a version of what we like to do, which is pontificate on a lesser known athlete in a lesser known sport that has the right cards, that has a selling marker in theory coming up. So props to you, Skeeter, because without that, I don't think we ever would have thought of Aaliyah Boston to even run her through the formula. And when Connor ran her through the formula, he did a brilliant job. He did find that there's a 36% ROI with the raw to grade and the Prism Silver. So there is a play there that we now know about, thanks to Skeeter and Connor working on that. I will say that I'm a new Paul Hickey, because I would have shat all over this idea a couple of months ago before the formula existed. So I have to kind of take one on the chin and go, okay, look, even though I built the formula, and I give myself a little pat on the back for that. Good job, Paul. I am humbled by the formula, because I think the reason I wanted to build it and work with Connor on perfecting it here, so that there's some insights for the family, is I wanted to make sure that we weren't missing opportunities, and I wanted to make sure moving forward that we were going to be right far more often than we were going to be wrong. And I think even though we've been right a lot, I think that we've probably been missing some opportunities because we've been focused on a certain core set of athletes and not really looking at other athletes that might have opportunities. So I want to give props to Skeeter. I want to give props to Connor. I want to agree with Connor ultimately on this entire play here. Reason being is because whenever there's hype around, we want to be selling the hype, right? And there's a lot of hype around women's basketball right now, and there's a lot of hype around the WNBA thanks to Caitlin Clark. Anecdotally, we all have a lot of data, and we all have a lot of anecdotes. I was at dinner with my father-in-law the other night, and he said he watched the WNBA draft. And a little bit of poop came out of my butt and ran down my leg because I was so surprised. I used to work in the WNBA. Many of you may not know that. And I never thought there would be a day when 2-point-something million people would actually watch the WNBA draft. Caitlin Clark, good job. Will the WNBA grow and will the WNBA be more and more popular? And will there be a long-term trickle-down effect because of this? Yes. Are there opportunities to immediately profit on this? Not really. We would have had to have sold the hype, hence the Caitlin Clark sell alert. So I'm going to stand by my flag plant. Really, it's become a flag plant, I think, because we've been asked about, Connor and I have been asked about Caitlin Clark and women's basketball a lot. I like that there's plays like the Aaliyah Boston play. I think that you can make money if we run things through the formula and we validate them. I don't love this. Because you're looking at, I agree with what Connor said. I'm always concerned with the collateral benefit. And I think sometimes we concoct stories in our minds about the way things we want, with things that we think might play out. And then we subconsciously convince ourselves that this is a good idea. The reason I'm here and the reason most of you value this about me and our membership at nooffseason.com and Connor, but I'm more outspoken about it than Connor is I want you to fade more things than you go into. And to me, this is a no-brainer fade. It's a great thought. It's what's fun about what we all do together. It's what's fun and entertaining about our content. And thank you, Skeeter, for that. But it's a fade. I want you to fade far more things than you actually do. That's you need to be doing probably 1 to 5% of what's possible for you to do. And to me, Skeeter, I've seen you in the live chat on the Sports Card Strategy show talking about women's basketball. I've seen you talking about golf. I know you know what you're doing. So if you do this, you probably will make money. I would advise you not to do it. I would advise you to put your money and energy into more concrete plays based on the formula. And there's plenty of them to talk about now, way more than there were before the formula existed. So hopefully that helps. I think it's great content, great discussion, valid idea. And Connor did validate that you can make money on the raw to grade. I just think you could get burned based on some of the assumptions that people are going to care about Aaliyah Boston cards in a few months when you get these back.
Yeah. A couple great things that you mentioned there. One thing I want to say is, Paul, is I'm on the exact same page. I think that there's a lot of players that you could find in the formula rankings that cost a similar price that you wouldn't have to rely on collateral effect to be the cause of their prices going up. So that's one thing to note. I also love, Paul, that you mentioned we sell at the hype, and the data that I found basically confirms this. So if we're actually using Caitlin Clark, we'll use a mix of Caitlin Clark being signed with Indiana, as well as kind of the WNBA tournament hype cycle kind of here. But if you look at the silvers, the day before Caitlin Clark was drafted, Aaliyah Boston's was $12. And then the 17th, 2 days after, it's $20. So literally almost doubled in price. If you look at the PSA 10 in February, it's selling for $60. Now it's selling for $100. If you look at the PSA 9, February, $20, March, $30, April, $60, right? So that information right there as a buyer would probably make me weary of investing, just because it looks like the prices have already gone up. The hype has already been there. And like Paul's saying, that's when we want to sell.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And so I just want to clarify something very important on that point. If you're new, or if you have, or if you've been around for a while and you've listened to us and you get our content, but you haven't transacted a lot, you wouldn't know how true what Connor said is. So for example, on one hand, you could use Connor's point against him and you could go, well, he's proving Skeeter's point because Aaliyah Boston's prices went up when they drafted Caitlin Clark. But, and this is a big but, now something else would have to happen. Like, they're not going to redraft Caitlin Clark again. That already happened. So what Connor's talking about is, and I don't know what to name this, but it's a thing. It happens all the time. It's like you can't, it's like a deja vu theory. I don't know. Like you can't have the same thing happen again. So something else would have to happen to drive that price up. Caitlin Clark is now there. That card now costs this. So what in the future is going to drive that up? And I think that's what's missing for Connor and I to advise Skeeter to buy into this card, because we don't know what that is. What we do know is that Skeeter would get these cards back a couple of months later. In order to make the numbers work economically, it would have to be a couple of months later. Now we're looking at June, and there's going to be less interest. Like, I mean, unless something happens, which could happen, there's going to be less interest than there is now in the fact that Caitlin Clark is who she is and is where she is and is doing the things she's doing, because you have to look at the world. There's going to be baseball all-star game. There's going to be the Olympics. There's going to be the NBA Summer League. Let's not gloss over the Olympics. How many times have we now seen the commercial with Common in it talking about how impressive this team's going to be? This commercial with Common, if you're watching the NBA playoffs, you see this commercial with the actor but former rapper Common, right? He's listing on, they're starting to just scratch the surface of promoting this next dream team and how impressive it is. And something in the future, like an Aaliyah Boston performance in the WNBA finals with Caitlin Clark, which might happen. But that's going to something like that's going to have to happen to move these card prices up to where we want them to be, to where Skeeter's going to make money. And if you want to take the risk on that, more power to you and have fun with it. And that's great. I'm not saying that facetiously. I'm just saying, would I do that? Would I advise you to do that, knowing that something like that's going to have to happen to drive these card prices up? No. And that's why it's a fade for me.
I love it. Yeah, great breakdown there. Hopefully, Skeeter, that does help. Again, like Paul mentioned, we know that you know what you're doing. So if you make this play in terms of raw to grade and it pans out, do keep us posted. Interesting to see how that plays out. One more thing that I wanted to add on top of what you had to say, Paul, and then we can move along, is you mentioned that another event of the same magnitude would have to occur for the prices to jump the consistent amount that we just saw from the previous event. Not only that, but the hype has to remain the same from the current event to not have the prices fall. So it's like a two-edged sword there, where both of those things have to be occurring. One, for the price to even stay where it is, and then the odds of it happening again. But that's just my two thoughts.
That's right. No, I'm glad you brought that up, because this happens all the time, and this is why this show is so good. This is why you have to stay subscribed, because you get nuggets like this every week. And what Connor just said is so true, because like, not only is it a reason to not assume that there's going to be the selling marker, but it's also a reason to not buy right now, because it's going to go down. So if you like Aaliyah Boston and you want to do this play, Skeeter and everybody else out there, wait, because the price is going to go down to Connor's. I mean, that's essentially what Connor's saying. And I think he's spot on.
Sweet. Skeeter, hopefully that did help. Thanks for submitting the question. Thanks for the fantastic support. Don't want you to think that we're just tearing you down there. That's just our conservative advice on the matter. Moving along, we'll hop over now to Brian B. Brian says, I joined about 9 months ago, and 3 players that I targeted were Jackson Churio, Jackson Holiday, as well as Caleb Williams. Jackson Churio and Jackson Holiday did not pan out as well as I hoped, but still holding on to some cards. Third player, as I mentioned, is Caleb Williams, and the draft is here. I have it as a buy it now, but do I make the price closer to current sells to sell during draft, or should I keep it where I have it just a little longer and hope to get an offer or sell just before the season starts? Brian, thanks for the submission here. We've talked about Caleb. I'm going to touch on the latter first. We've talked about Caleb Williams in pretty decent detail over the last several weeks in terms of selling strategies, both on the Overflow Show and on the Sports Card Strategy Show. And to be honest with you, Brian, I think we'd need to know what specific card that you're holding here to give a more accurate depiction of how we would take on that art of selling, as Paul would mention. I think if it's a lower end card, I'd list it in an auction ASAP to capitalize on the draft hype that is coming. Might have it end at the end of the NFL draft to get residuals from the interest of the team's fan base that he does join. If it's a high end card, I like the idea of listing it now. It sounds like you might have it listed higher right now, so keeping it now at a buy it now or best offer that puts you squarely into the green. Knowing that if there's no bites on that from the draft, Caleb Williams will have several more sell markers potentially coming in the next weeks and months, whether it be the preseason, the regular season, etc. So that's my thoughts on the Caleb Williams portion of it. But Paul, I'll pass it over to you to give your thoughts on Caleb Williams and the rest of the submission here.
Yeah, Brian, thanks so much, man. Really appreciate your support. Glad you've joined and you've stayed with us, and we're gonna help you make some money, man. So yeah, we're not popping the champagne bottles for the Jacksons. We all are a little bit underwhelmed, myself included, with how we've done on Jackson Churio and Jackson Holiday. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We're going to talk more about it later in today's episode. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But at the same time, we're experiencing what we would expect to experience with some plays that you don't win on. Maybe you take a little bit of an L, but you recoup enough to stay in the game and move it forward, which is the game. Like, that's the game of flipping sports cards. That's why we're here. So talking about Caleb Williams, like, the theme of a lot of our content lately, even if it hasn't been an obvious theme, there's been underlying undercurrents between Connor and I where we've elevated certain kinds of insights to essentially learn from our mistakes, is the best way to put it. So I like this question, Brian, because it's like in lockstep with everything that we're doing. Which is like, how do we maximize our returns on Caleb Williams after kind of experiencing some underwhelming things with Churio and Holiday? Even though it's like completely different players and completely different sports, it's like similar times a year, different sell markers, but similar times a year, and actually similar cards, right? The Bowman Chrome first cards, even though it's university football for Williams and it's Bowman baseball and Bowman draft for Churio and Holiday, respectively. Connor's right. We do need to know the card. We do need to know the card in order to really answer the question. And I think that's what I'm realizing lately, is that more often than not, we're asking for the details of the card. So I think I need to admit that that's probably on me. And what we need to do is change the ask form. So I'm going to change the ask form to make it be almost required to put certain card information in, and I'll figure out how to do that. So stay tuned for that in the coming weeks. And then I think the other thing Connor and I will do is we'll ask for the card information when the question comes in, to give you guys enough time to give us the actual card information so that we have it on the show. Sometimes it's unavoidable because we're actually taking a lot of buzzer beaters these days. So I think what I would do in general here, though, is exactly what Connor said, which is like, if it's a lower end card, meaning like if you're less than $100 into the card, it's an auction. Like, it's an auction, because if you're less than $100 into a card, unless you absolutely fleeced somebody and got like a banger for less than $100, which typically does not happen, or unless you pulled it in a break, and you're less than $100 into it, or pulled it out of wax, got lucky. Assuming that you bought it as a single and paid market value for it at the time, you're going to want to auction a card that's less than $100, just regardless of what card it is. And I think you're okay doing that. I'm always saying 60 to 80% of what you bought it for, something like 40 to 60%. I wouldn't go 40%. I wouldn't go under 40% of what you bought any card for as your opening bid. Unless it's like a Shat card, you're not going to get more than $30 for it. Just 99 cents and let it ride, those things. But I would say, like, where you're at, Brian, if it's under $100, I'd have my opening bid. Let's just do it this way to keep it simple, since we don't know the card. If it's $100 card, $59.99 opening bid. That's the general rule. And like Connor said, auction it ASAP to capitalize on the draft hype. What you're looking at right now would be, as soon as you watch this show after it airs, you're gonna have, like, this show's gonna be posted at around, say, let's just say safely 5 p.m. Eastern time on Friday, April 19th. That's literally 7 days and 3 hours from when I want you posting this. So I want you scheduling the auction 3 hours after you watch this, and boom, that's it. So if it's a bigger card, though, you're definitely going to want to think through it more. If you're $200, $300, $400, $500, $600 into a card, I'd go buy it now or best offer, and I'd get it up listed, but I'd field offers, and I would accept offers. And do the math yourself, because we don't know the card and we don't know how much you're into the card for. I would accept offers that put you at like a 30% net profit out the door. So because if they don't sell, if the bigger cards don't sell, giving you that profit, because they're bigger cards, they do have the runway that Connor alluded to of potential performance-based sell markers or hype-based sell markers in the preseason, training camp, the preseason, and maybe even, the first part of the regular season, if you still haven't moved it, still haven't profited. I think you're rolling the dice the longer you hold it, the longer you hold a bigger card. But the good news is for Caleb, Drake, and some of these other guys, Marvin Harrison Jr., is that there's going to be July hype, there's going to be August hype, and there's going to be potentially September performance. So that's the best way that I can answer that question, Brian, without knowing the exact card, but appreciate it and keep the questions coming, man.
Hopefully that did help you, Brian. If you're looking for more information, submit another question at nooffseason.com/ask with kind of those details that we mentioned, and we can go more into depth there. But thanks for the support, and thanks for the submission. Moving right along, we're heading over now to Peter M., who has a follow-up to a previous question. He asked us about a Spectra Universal die-cut Puka Nakua out of 10. Says, I took your advice and got it graded at PSA. It came back as a 10. I still have no idea what this card is worth. I'm into the card for $150 plus 17 modern special grading fee. Any suggestions on pricing this card or a strategy to sell it? As a side note, my modern card special submission was received by PSA on the 1st of 2024, and I received the grades on the 16th. Super fast turnaround. It was a 16 card submission. I love one that we're getting quick turnarounds from PSA. So thanks for the information there, Peter. And obviously love that you got a 10 on this. I think that's big time, being that obviously, well, we kind of had a debate, Paul, and if it mattered that since it was out of 10, if it mattered to get it graded or not. But I think just getting the 10 kind of solidifies the rarity of this card, right? So there's a few ways that you can look at this, Paul, and I'm going to give a couple options to lay out, and then Paul, I'll let you give the finite answer. I'm probably holding this card until September and listing it in a buy it now or best offer around $400 until the regular season starts, to see if preseason hype will get you any bites. Kind of like Paul was saying on the last question, just kind of field offers there. And at that point, if nothing has really occurred, I think you've got a few different ways you can go. And I'm going to list them in my least favorite to my most favorite, and then let Paul kind of steer the ship. But my least favorite one is waiting until week 3. At that point, the Rams are going to play the 49ers. I think you could potentially use this game as an opportunity to list Puka's card in an auction ending right after the game. Obviously, the 49ers will be a big game there. Week 3 is kind of going to kind of be like peak NFL regular season hype right before we get close to that midseason dip occurring. So I think this is probably my least favorite option, Paul, just because it leaves a lot of downside risk still on the table there. Just relying on an auction for a super rare card just seems a little bit risky. My second favorite or middle option here would be to keep the card at a high buy it now or best offer price and wait for a performance-based spike from Puka. I think you could use this option, Paul, if you are not hurting for cash flow. But like you mentioned in the last question, the longer you hold this card, the more risk you kind of become susceptible to. So that's why this is likely my second favorite option. And then, Paul, my favorite option here would be to relist it if you haven't gotten any bites on the high buy it now slash or best offer listing. Relist at a lower price to get this card moved and get the cash flow back. Paul, I think skill position guys just get injured too frequently. And if the Rams are not playing well, or even if Puka has a down year, I think this card could absolutely plummet. So this is probably my favorite option. I think that I can't remember how they acquired this card, Paul, but obviously getting to 10 is going to help the value. So I think you're probably going to be in the green either way as long as you can get it moved. But that's just my thoughts there. I'll let you take it away, Paul.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I mean, literally what I would do is I would list this card right now in a buy it now or best offer, and I'd probably list it at like $599.99 just for the hell of it, and I'd accept offers, and I'd take any offer probably over $350. I think that's just a good, smart, sound move, not being too greedy, not trying to, I don't know. Like, again, we talked about this on last week's show or a couple weeks ago, whenever we got the first question. Peter, I'm glad that this worked out for you, and I appreciate the follow-up. It's a great follow-up question, by the way. Love that you got a 10, and love that, that you found value in our first answer. The second answer is simple. It's just like, we don't know what this card's going to go for, because it's probably a pop 1, right? Like, I'd be shocked if this is not a pop 1. I mean, it's out of 10, and it's a PSA 10, and it's a Spectra Universal die cut, which is like type card. If this card is such an card, if it wasn't out of 10, there would really be nothing to it. The fact that it is out of 10, and now the fact that you've doubled down and you've got a PSA 10, you've already won because it's a PSA 10, and you're only $167 into it. Is this card probably worth twice what you're into it for? Yes. Is it worth much more than that? Debatable. Which is why I would probably take anything over $350. I'm also conservative, and I want to get profit and then decide what to do with that profit. Whereas like a lot of other people might want to try to max this fucker out at like some kind of performance spike, but we're not. That's not our philosophy here. So I would move on from it. And I'll say this as to why I think it's something that you move. Like, everything Connor said is spot on, and I don't want to repeat it. But you have to also think about, there's a lot of hype around Puka right now. Like, even though it's the NFL offseason, the people who want this card, like your market for this card, Peter, are people who follow the NFL. They follow fantasy football. They're already drafting in best ball drafts before the NFL draft. They know that Puka is a top PPR fantasy wide receiver. He's an amazing best ball fantasy draftee. And though I think that the market for this card is like your football card quest type people that are really into fantasy football, the NFL, and sports cards. And so those people are hype about football cards right now. They want football cards right now. We've done these daily market update shows for a couple of weeks now. The football market update outperforms every other sport by a lot. So there's a lot of momentum, even though Puka Nacua is not in the news right now, which is why I would just go ahead and list it. I definitely would not auction it. I think that Connor's spot on that you shouldn't auction this card until probably the start of the NFL season. But I mean, anything can happen. Like, preseason injuries happen all the time in the NFL. So I would get rid of this card sooner rather than later. It is a gem, literally and figuratively. And so congratulations on that. I would get my money and I would move on. I would put Connor's idea of around $400 is exactly where I want to be for this thing. I would take anything over $350, and I'd start it. The strategy there is buy it now or best offer, starting at around $599.99. And here's one more thing, Peter. This out of all the things that Connor and I just said, this might be the most important one. Because, and I hate this about PSA's label, PSA does not put that it's serial numbered out of 10 on the label. Do not forget to put that this thing is serial numbered out of 10 in the title of your eBay listing. That is clutch. That is huge. So congratulations on the card. Let us know how you do. Keep us posted.
Love it. Good breakdown there. Hopefully that does go well. Glad they were able to get a 10, Peter, and let us know how you do there. Moving along next, we're going over to ENT that says, what is the best way and most profitable way to buy into prospects, especially raw, chrome refractors, non-autos, as well as autos for the 4 major sports? Bowman Chrome first. Bowman Chrome University first Bowman's as the premier line of prospect cards, ? Should I concentrate on PSA 10s or go with raw? One caveat being I'm in Canada, so grading is a more expensive proposition here, as well as shipping and custom fees. Paul, real quick, I'm just going to give a quick set of thoughts and let you take things away. I like where Ian's head's at in terms of trying to find the best strategy here, and I hate to be this guy, but Paul, I think like we've mentioned with the formula, we're learning that it really is totally player and card dependent in terms of deciding if you should buy a specific card in PSA 10 and flip it, or even buy it raw and grade it. I don't want to give a blanket statement here, Paul, but what I do want to say is based on our first couple weeks of information, it seems like the raw to grade plays often have more upside. And the other thing I like about that, Paul, is that you don't have to wait for a specific sell marker when you do the raw to grade. So for those reasons, maybe that would be my pick, but I think we need more information. Then I'm going to let you answer the rest of the question here, Paul.
Yeah, Ian, Connor's spot on again. He's batting 1,000 today. This is a question that is answered by the formula. So when you go to our sports card rankings at nooffseason.com, you should see a button that says click here to view our formula-based rankings. And the way that I'll answer this question is using our formula, because Connor and I are updating this pretty much all day, every day when we're not doing these shows. And so, raw to grade would be this is what we would tell you to do. Brandon Miller, 2023 Prism Silver 152. That's going to yield you the most projected ROI. You would need 14 of them and $1,108.22 to net $1,000. And that's with all of your fees and costs considered in our formula, except necessarily for the fact that you're in Canada. So your profit margin is going to be the same amount less. So even though you're in Canada, and that is a factor for you, and I empathize and sympathize with that, it would be the same fees for any of these cards. So the way that we would answer your question needs to basically be the same regardless of if you're in the US or in Canada. So the only thing that's going to be different is the amount of actual profit that you would make. But what's not going to change is what card we would tell you to buy raw and grade. That's going to be based on the projected ROI, which does not change when you change the profit goal number. When you change, it doesn't change the total buy-in amount, the amount needed. It doesn't change the projected average sale price. Like those things are locked in. The projected ROI is locked in. The only thing that could change is like what your total profit would be, and that sort of thing, based on the fact that you're in Canada. So I would say Brandon Miller's 2023 Prism Silver 152, followed by Joe Burrow's 2020 Optic Hollow Raw 151. You get to the Bowman Chrome University at Travis Hunter. So that if that's the kind of card that you want to buy, that would be your first option, because the first two weren't Bowman Chromes. So Travis Hunter's 2023 Bowman Chrome U Sapphire 36 first prospect base would be your card. And then you would just have to go down the list. The next one would be Drew Jones, 2023 Bowman Chrome first prospect auto raw, because you can get those for around $65 now and 42% projected ROI. So this is going to change every day though, Ian. Because we updated, not because we updated every day. It's going to change every day because the card market pricing changes every day. That's why we update it every day. Now on the already graded side, you're just going to have less of a profit margin because the cards are already graded. You're going to have a PSA 10 in your hand, and you might be paying less fees because of the fact that you're in Canada with shipping and customs. But you're going to have a PSA 10 in your hand. But because you're going to have a PSA 10 in your hand, unless you can find some of these top ones for the target cost, you're going to have a lower projected ROI. Because what we do on this tab, the already graded tab, is we're ultra conservative with what we think it actually could sell for at the marker sale month that we show you. So that's actually more information for everybody about the formula. On the already graded tab, we're showing you the sale month, the sell marker, because you need that for an already graded card. Raw to grade, you don't need a sell marker. So we're not showing you a month. We're just saying you could profit on this card. If you hold it for a sell marker, you could potentially profit more. But to Connor's point, you don't even need to hold it for a sell marker to profit on it. So I think that's all I'll say, Ian. I mean, I think like you're in a different situation because you're in Canada. Should you concentrate on PSA 10s or go raw? There's just more profit margin in the raw to grade. Like that's what it is. And that's what the formula is there for. If your situation dictates that you pay significantly less shipping and customs to just simply buy PSA 10s, then I would probably go that route.
Love it. Thanks for the breakdown there, Paul. Moving right along, is coming back into the hobby, trying to guide my 9-year-old son through his transition into sports cards from trading card games. Do you have any tips for newbies on which brands you should collect for the MLB and the NBA? I'm not looking to make $1,000 a month, but I am trying to strike the right balance between picking up raw to grade and buying hobby boxes with good hit rates. I recently purchased a few Topps Heritage because I love this 75 theme, but realized a lot of the liquidity and price movement are within Bowman for MLB or Prism for NBA. Thanks for taking the newbie question.
Great question, man. Yeah, it's pretty simple. MLB, Bowman Chrome Firsts. Bowman Chrome Firsts is where you want to start. Now, you can have fun with some deep prospecting if you know baseball really well, because there's a lot of like penny stock type situations where you could go out and get autos for cheap. For the bigger names, I would say that their refractor, the base refractor firsts, that just say refractor on the back. They don't say out of $4.99 unless it's an auto. So for the bigger names, if you don't want to pay as much money for the singles, you can get in on the base refractor firsts. For the names that you like that aren't the bigger names, you could probably get their autos for the same price as you would get the bigger names refractors raw. And then, but what we typically, from an investing standpoint, we typically want you to look at the raw autos as kind of like the base and to grade them, like the Drew Jones one I mentioned in the answer a minute ago. But the formula has also told us that there is the ability to make money on even some non-auto Bowman Chrome base cards. So, and there's opportunity if they're already in PSA 10, the raw to grade. We had an Ethan Salas card tick up in the formula that I think has now ticked down from the formula quite a bit. Now it's a less than 1% profit margin. But earlier this week, based on the price that you could get it at. So this is not based on its market being down as to why it's gone down. It's based on what you could have gotten it at earlier in the week was much less than what you would have to pay for it now, most likely. And that's why it's gone down. So you got to take that into account with the already graded cards. But I know you're talking more about just getting into the hobby with your 9-year-old. So Bowman Chrome Draft is an expensive one, but a fun one. Bowman Draft is what it's called, not Bowman Chrome Draft. Bowman Baseball is a good one. It's a little bit less expensive than Draft, but it's still achievable, and it's expensive to rip with a 9-year-old if the 9-year-old is going to be the one holding the cards, but it's not as expensive as Draft. So it's a fun one. You can make some money off that one. Topps Chrome, Connor has here in the show notes. He's right about that. Because if you go back to some 2018 Topps Chrome stuff, some 2019 Topps Chrome stuff for the top names with the RC shield, there is some value there, although just on the base stuff, it's not really that valuable. So that's why it's Topps Chrome rookies are a lot less valuable than Bowman Chrome firsts. And then NBA, it's basically Prism. Like there's a lot of other NBA releases. There's high-end releases that are probably a little bit unachievable for you and your 9-year-old if you're not looking at investments. So Prism's the one. I mean, I would avoid all the other NBA releases. I'd avoid Donruss. I'd avoid Hoops. I'd just go straight to Prism and hope you get lucky with some parallels or some silvers. It's a little bit more expensive, harder to get, but it's worth it, I think, above Donruss and Hoops. And this is if you're looking to have fun with your 9-year-old and maybe make some money versus just simply buying singles. Prism has the lasting power. While there are plays with Hoops and Donruss, you got to be fast. You got to get them before Prism comes out on the release calendar. So if we're just speaking in general, we're talking Prism. There's also Optic, which does well, and then there's Contenders and Contenders Optic. So I would rank them as Prism, Optic, Contenders, and Optic as kind of the only. I would fade Select. Select's pretty watered down now. However, with your 9-year-old, Select might be at the price point that you guys can afford, and you might be able to find Select now because it is watered down and there's less interest in it, and it is at retail. So the only reason I said fade Select from an investment standpoint, but if you're looking to rip and have fun with your 9-year-old son, Select might be actually the nice sweet spot for you. So hopefully that makes sense. I know there's a lot in there. The mistake that everybody's going to make at first, and I want to call yours a mistake yet because of your goal. Your goal is not to make money. But like buying Topps paper stuff like Heritage and all that, that's got to just be entertainment value for you. If it's entertainment value for you and your son, great. But I think if you're looking to get anything that's worth anything in the future, you got to fade all the paper stuff for baseball and basketball, Panini and Topps. I think you got to go, you got to try to get the Prism and the Chrome, because that's where everyone, will maybe have interest in the future if you have the right card for the right player.
Good stuff, Paul. As we move along, we're heading over now to Mark D, who says, my neighbor just got back into sports cards, had a long talk with them about stuff that I have learned. I told him only to rip wax for fun as it is a losing sports card strategy. Of course, he just messaged me this, and obviously you guys don't know what he means by this, but it is a photo of a Brawny X-Fractor Bowman U Sapphire that he ripped. Mark says he is lost because he's ripping wax. He says, thoughts, I told him to sell it now, look to maybe get 1,000 of it. Or you could feel out local card shops first to save on taxes. It's a non-first, non-auto. Here are the photos. I figured if you can get $500, it is a win. Paul, I'm curious to see what you think to do with this Brawny in terms of trying to move a non-first. And if you think we should wait for Brawny to kind of get back into the news cycle to list, or what your thought process is here.
This is a Bowman Chrome U Sapphire 1 of 1. So this dude got super lucky, Mark D's friend. So happy about that. And I would list it now. I mean, it goes along with the strategy that we've talked about for selling anybody that's not at a selling marker. You just list it now in a buy it now or best offer. And I agree with Mark D in terms of looking to get maybe 1,000 for it because it is a 1 of 1 and it's a huge win. If this were an auto 1 of 1 or if this were a first 1 of 1, I'd be looking to probably get a lot more than 1,000. I agree with Mark saying if he gets 500, it's a win. So I would list now in a buy it now or best offer at, why not up it a little bit and list it at like 1,500? Because then you might get a higher offer. It's just that psychology of it. There's not going to be comps for this card. It's very, very hard to price out. So I think it's one where you have to resign yourself to the fact that it's going to be purchased by someone who probably would have paid a little bit more for it. Right? Yeah, I think you have to think like a psychologist on this one. Like, you're going to leave money on the table because it's going to be bought by someone who would have paid more for it. So you have to resign yourself to the fact that you're going to leave money on the table. And because you opened it, you won the lottery. And I think you want to take what you can get for it as soon as possible. To Connor's sort of point about a selling marker, to me, the worst case scenario listing it at $1,500 is getting offers that make you think, I could get 750 for this, or I could get 900 for this, or 1,200 for this. Let me do that. So you have to like field the offers, accept the offers if you want the money, and that's not a bad worst case scenario. And then what would happen would be like when the selling marker does come around, when there's more hype around Bronny, maybe making a decision to go to a school, or maybe entering the NBA draft, that news cycle would be when it should sell. Like you should get more offers and you should accept those offers during that news cycle. And then I think like lastly, it would be like auctioning this thing off. If you've held it for too long and haven't sold it, auctioning this thing off during a next college game of Bronny, or during an NBA draft or an NBA summer league, and getting true market value for it at that point. And I think all things considered, you're probably going to get around $500 to $1,500 for it. It's just hard to say whether it's going to be the low end or the high end. Regardless of what all those different strategic things that we just said, I think the end thing is that's what you're going to end up getting for it. So congratulations.
Yeah, definitely a sweet pool. Thanks for the breakdown there, Paul, and thanks for the submission here, Mark. The next question comes from Anthony S. Says, before I found the nooffseason.com family, made some stupid sports card purchases. He says, by some, I mean a lot. Right now, I'm $1,400 into a Donovan Mitchell Panini Select tie-dye Prism 10, PSA 10, rookie out of 25. And the card is worth now about half of that. At what point do I cut my losses? I still think he's undervalued, to be honest, but at this point, I would need some huge market-moving event just to get able to break even. Thanks, guys. I'm loving the premium content so far. I've learned more the past few weeks than I have in the last year or two. Paul, I really like this question because I think that a lot of people that invest in that, like, I think it's an interesting position for people to be in that have invested a large amount into a card without kind of finding our content and knowing our processes and then realizing it's worth half of that, because then you just have to decide at what point are you willing to kind of bite the bullet and take a huge loss, right? So I always think these questions are interesting. And Anthony, of course, we're pumped to have you as a part of the family, and we love that you are finding value in learning from our content. Here are my thoughts first, and then I'll kick to Paul. The Cavs do play the Magic in the first round. The 20th is the first game. Personally, I think because this is a high-end card, I would list this at maybe 120% of current comps to try and get bites from playoff hype or capitalize on strong performances from Spider during the playoff series. My concern, Paul, is that with how many good teams are in the NBA now with huge markers in the playoffs, this series probably won't get as much attention as it deserves. I think if the Cavs make it to the second round or even make a deeper push somehow, then we could discuss trying to move this card in auction maybe in a later round. But I think having this thing up right now, higher than comps, trying to capitalize on strong performances from Spida, it will probably be a good point to cut the cord. Just because if you can get this card sold for more than it's worth, I think it might be time to get that cash flow back, because now that you're following our content, you know where to invest that cash flow once you get it back, and we can work on kind of trying to recoup some of those losses. But that's just my 2 cents. Paul, curious to see what you got here.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate everything Connor just said. I mean, Anthony, thank you for finding us. Thank you for joining the nooffseason.com fam. We hope you stay subscribed for the long term. We're definitely going to help you make money flipping sports cards. And while this is looking like an L for you from a dollars and cents standpoint, I think that your listing looks great. I wouldn't change anything about the listing. What you're trying to do here makes sense to me with the buy it now or best offer. It is a great card, and Donovan Mitchell, we just have to hope that Donovan Mitchell becomes a super relevant, hyped player during the NBA playoffs. And I think Connor's right. I think it would have to take like a Cavs win and Mitchell being very, very hot in the playoffs, Cavs series win, that is, for this card to move. However, I think it'll probably, because it is such a big card, I almost think leaving it as is and not moving it into an auction, because Donovan Mitchell, like, he could move in the offseason too. And then there's the beginning of next basketball season. Like, it's not like, I'm not worried about it being Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell is in a very similar situation to a lot of other NBA stars in the card market. And that is, if you're holding their cards, like, when do you sell them? I mean, we've struggled with this from an NBA standpoint. So I think you're actually entering a month, the next month or so, that is a positive month for you to move this card as close to the $1,400 that you're into it for. And Connor's right. I mean, an auction could be the move if the Cavs make it far and if Spida's on fire, but I almost think then someone's going to bin it and you're just going to get out of it. You know, I think you just need to get out of this card, even though it's a great card, but you don't need to do it desperately. You don't need to be desperate. So if this were a base Prism or something like that, and you were underwater on it, I think there'd be a little bit more, there'd be less money invested, but there'd be more urgency to try to get out of it. So I think you're in good shape. This is actually similar situation, Connor, to what I'm in with my Darius Garland Kaboom, BGS 9.5. It's almost the same situation because, you know, I'm $850 into that. I've had offers for $9, you know, I've had offers for like $850, $9, maybe $9, you know, $950 has been like a stretch. And so I've been a bit stubborn on trying to move that. I think Anthony's in a similar situation where it's like, he doesn't need to be desperate, but he does need to get out of it at some point. I think that you can get out of it, Anthony, in the next month. And, but I wouldn't worry if like the Cavs sort of petered out in the playoffs and are underwhelming. And if Spider's underwhelming, then you can have, there's future selling markers for this card. So, thanks for all of the support, and we'll move it along here, but appreciate the question. Keep the questions coming, brother.
nooffseason.com/ask is going to be the spot for that. Up next, Paul, we're going to move over to Jim C. Just to give a brief recap, and I'll let Paul take over. But Jim C has been investing in some of the top prospects that we pitched for baseball, and things didn't pan out quite how we wanted. So Jim C is looking for a bit of a pep talk here and a breakdown on why we think that things happen the way they did. But Paul, I'll let you take things away.
Yeah, Jim, let's go. He says, "Hey boys, need a pick me up. MLB season has turned into kind of an L season for me." So he references a Churio sale that started off the season, which he calls it a baby L. Then he says he did okay with Wyatt Langford making $350 net profit on 5 base autos. So totaling up between those 5 is a total net profit of $350. And I'm going to kind of stop it right there because he says he did okay. And I'm just going to say, Jim, I think level setting expectations a little bit right here is kind of important because I think that's actually very good. To take $350 net profit on 5 cards in general is, you know, Connor and I did the rough math and we saw it likely at somewhere between 20 and 30% net profit. Sorry if we're wrong on that, but I mean, just $70 per card is your total net profit. So you look at it like you're buying and selling goods, and you're in a situation where you've sold 5 goods for a total of $70 net profit. Regardless of margin, that's significant. Like that's a significant amount of money to move product for. Knowing that Wyatt Langford's card came out in December, that would have been the earliest you could have had it. We're just talking about, you know, 4 or 5 months later, making $70 per card on 5 cards. That's actually very good. I know like perspective is everything, but you're saying it's okay. I think that's like I would put that on the very good scale. Holiday, Jackson Holiday, he says, man, I'm fixing to take a bath on this. I have 4 cards, all 2022 Bowman draft first, bought around November, December, listed at the sell alert, the night of the sell alert on the day he got called up in 99-cent auctions. All clear, well lit, pictures in a light box. 2 I listed in 7-day auctions ending Wednesday the 17th, so just 2 days ago at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So good timing in terms of what we talk about. And one was this is where it gets important to know the cards to break this down. One was a first Chrome Refractor PSA 9 non-auto, bought it for $65, sold for 30. It says 39.66 net of fees. So it actually would have been, I'm going to guess more of like a $55 sale price. So I would say here, Jim, that's kind of to be expected for that card. Like that card is not a desirable card. The Refractor non-auto PSA 9 that's honestly a card that, personally, if you would have bought the raw card and then had it graded and it's a PSA 9, that would have been part of a much larger grading play. So you can't evaluate that way in a vacuum. Like that can't even be evaluated that way in a vacuum. If you bought that card, I would kind of challenge you to say, why did you buy that card? A PSA 9, I mean, as far as I know, I never would have said anything about buying this card in a PSA 9 as a play that would have made you money. So I'm actually not surprised that this card was bought for $65, sold for like $50, $55, because $40 net of fees, that would have been around like a $50 to $55 card, I believe. So correct me if I'm wrong on that, Jim. And then you say bought base auto raw, bought for $525, sold for $329 net of fees. So that you're the $380 comp. So you sold it for $380. You say no idea why so low, over 150 views, 55 bits. I would say to that card, Connor and I talked a lot about this pre-show. We think 99-cent opening bid was the mistake on that. I apologize to Jim and anybody else out there if I have said anything to the contrary. I don't believe I have, but what I have said consistently for the past several months on cards of this magnitude, where you're that much into the card, is that I want you listing it at around a 40 to 60% of what you paid for it opening bid, which in this case would have been obviously significantly higher than 99 cents. So it would have been, I'm guessing on my math, but I would have listed this card for around a $399, $349, $399-ish opening bid, which I did myself, by the way, on mine. And I'll break that down here in a second for you. And I'm seeing much better results from my auctions that end later tonight. So, because I did 10-day auctions, which I think you've done as well. So you said you have another 2 listed the same day, but in 10-day auctions. So good job. So Chrome base auto PSA 9, which is exactly what mine is, bought for $525, current bid $405, but comps around $440 and $450. Yeah, so we'll have to see on that. Mine currently, I'll just tell you, mine are at my Jackson Holidays are okay. So one of my auto 9, base auto 9 first is at $304. That has 2 days left. The one that ends in 5 hours is at $405. So it's basically right where yours is at. And I may be, if I'm around the 440 and 450, then it's a wash for me. Which is obviously be disappointing, but that would be part of the game. That's just part of the game. And the entire Jackson Holiday play for me, I actually have to go to the next card. Chrome base Sapphire PSA 10 bought for 300, current bid 255. I'm in a very, very similar situation to you. I bought it for around 300 and it has 5 hours left as of now. It's 3 p.m. Eastern time or 3 p.m. Central time, by the way. That one's at $261. So we're pretty much neck and neck with the last two cards, and we did the exact same thing. And I'm gonna be okay. Like I'm either going to, in a vacuum on those two cards, I'm either going to profit slightly, like 10%, or I'm gonna be 10% under, and that's expected. So I'm doing the same thing that in these last two card cases that you're doing, and I think I probably bought in at a little bit less than you did. I think I bought it. Well, I can tell you, I bought in at, let's see. This is why I love this dashboard here. Yeah, I bought in at a little less than you did. Under 500 all in for each of those two autos. And then on the Sapphire, okay, I bought in at 350 on the Sapphire, but I'm going to be okay. Again, it's going to be a wash, or I'm going to be maybe 10% under. However, this is the point. This is the big point that I want to underscore. It's that on my entire Jackson Holiday play, I'm going to be up because I've got the Chrome Refractor base first PSA 10 that I'm going to be up on, and I've got the base PSA 10 first that I'm going to be up on. And I don't have any 9s if they're not autos. And I think that could be the difference. And I haven't auctioned off at starting at 99 cents for my bigger cards. So we'll see. We might end it around the same place. So it might be that the 99-cent opening bid is okay. If it's the right card, it's going to get to the same place. But that's where you're 50. That's where you shouldn't be surprised that you have 55 bids, but only that price. The reason you have 55 bids and I have 4 bids is because you started yours at 99 cents and I started mine at like $399. So you enticed a lot more bids by the 99-cent opening bid, but ultimately we might get to the same place. Now, so here's your question. Your question is, where did I go wrong? I heard you boys talking about not getting greedy, selling before the call up. And we just want to clarify one thing here. We never said that selling before the call up would be being greedy. What we said is don't wait significantly until after the call up to sell, thinking that you might get more money for it, because in actuality, the card's going to go down quite a bit. It's going to plummet. So by the phraseology that we used in terms of not getting greedy was in reference to don't hold past the call up thinking that you're going to make more money. Sell at the call up as your last possible selling marker. And I will say that over the last at least 4 months, we've been pretty adamant about the opportunity to sell prior to the call up as a valid strategy to sort of not have all of the eggs in the basket of selling right at that marker, but to potentially look at selling early in a buy it now or best offer. I will admit that there was probably 9 months of sell at the call up, sell at the call up, sell at the call up verbiage before we started to take the path and look at, okay, hey, with these events coming on the calendar, here's what you need to take into consideration. But I will kind of, defend ourselves a little bit against that statement there, because we've been very, very clear over the last 4 months about taking a look at making sure that you mitigate risk by potentially listing early in buy it now or best offer, depending on the cards. So you've got a theory in here about, your theory is that the market is catching up to things. And I would do you one better. I would say we've known that. Like we've always known that people are hip to going where they ain't, buying in the off season, selling and selling during the hype. Like that's always happened, man. Like, so I guess you're right, but I would do you one better and say like, there's nothing new here. Like, We've known that, but what we're wanting you to do is to go, what we're trying to help you do, what we feel like we're helping you do is to go several steps further than that basic strategy. Like you could take that basic strategy, but you could lose a lot of money. And that's the point that you're making. But what we do with our formula-based rankings now and our buying the right card for the right player at the right time, helping you try to find these opportunities to buy these cards low that could take off, is definitely one step further than what everybody else is, several steps further than what everybody else is doing, because what everybody else is doing is what you described. So I don't think that in your you kind of have like a manifesto in here in your question about like the market catching up to these ideas. It's been caught up. Like what, and so this kind of brings me to my last point. My last point, I think it's part expectations management, but it's part like, it's just reality is what it is. Is like, but it's accurate in terms of what I've said for a long time. You should think of this as 80% of what you're doing is going to be a wash. 20% of what you're doing is going to be where you win big. In that 80%, there's going to be like 20% of the 80%. So if we had to just whatever, let's redo my statement. 60% is going to be a wash. 20% you're going to be under. 20% you're going to be over. The 20% you're going to be over is going to do two things. It's going to far make up for the 20% that you're under. And it's also going to more than justify the time with which an effort with which you're 60% even. Now, that needs to be your mindset, Jim. Your mindset can't be, where did I go wrong? You can't look at these things in a vacuum. The where did I go wrong, though, that Connor and I came up with tactically, really the only thing that we came up with tactically, I guess, would be the 99-cent starting price on all the cards. You know, if you want an actionable takeaway there and not just like philosophy, I would say definitely make sure that you're, and we've said this quite a bit, like their starting bid on those cards should be at a point where even if you only get one bid and it sells for that one bid, you're not out on a big card more than like 30-40% of what you're into it for, which keeps you in the game. It keeps you flipping. It keeps you going. And that's what we want to do here. So we appreciate the question. And I know, Jim, I know that it's with nothing but love that you ask it. So know that it's with nothing but love back to you on the reply. We're just trying to make the nooffseason.com fam a better place to make money flipping sports cards. That's all we're trying to do. We're not going to be right on everything. But I will say that we've always said that. And I will say that, it's tough to look at things in a vacuum. You got to stay in the game. That's what we're trying to help you do. And let's keep it positive and move it along here for sure.
Yeah. Paul, I think that's a great breakdown. I just want to add just a little bit more. Jim closes it off here with "Talk to me, boys. Tell me there are easier profits down the road." And like Paul mentioned, we definitely don't want you to feel like we're sitting here and kind of ragging on you, telling you that you're the reason that you didn't make a ton of money on Jackson Holiday. Like Paul mentioned, there's a couple of things tactically that you probably could have done different. But Paul, I think in general with the two Jacksons, like you mentioned earlier in the show, we've all been kind of disappointed here. And I love that we're doing the auctions that end that give time for the players to have any sort of performance-based spike during their first week as a prospect. And we didn't really see Jackson Holiday's prices drop that much, like we had mentioned, that it gives you the upside of if they pop off, the cards will pop off. But the downside is that no one's going to really be super upset if their first week as a pro is super down. Well, Jackson Holiday has been extremely down in terms of a player, right, Paul? He's quite literally 1 for 25 at the plate, a .040 average with 14 strikeouts. I think this is literally one of the worst case scenarios that we could have had with Jackson Holiday. We're never going to sit here and wait for a performance-based spike, but if Jackson just had 2 or 3 good games mixed in there with a homer or a 3 or 4 hit game, these cards would be worth so much more. And I really do feel like this was probably the worst case scenario for the auctions that we could have had happen. And to only be washing, like you're saying, if we're washing 10, 20%, I think that's actually pretty good here. And obviously it's disappointing because it's someone that we expect to make a lot of profits on, but sometimes things just don't work out how you expect. We do our due diligence to know who's going to be the guy. He definitely was the guy, but sometimes things just don't pan out. So there are going to be easier profits moving forward. Keep investing in the guys that we're saying. We've got sell alerts coming out, I feel like weekly at this point, Paul, on guys that we have been winning on. So we're going to try to give you guys as many opportunities to make money as stress-free as possible. We hate that this didn't pan out as well as you wanted, but I truly do feel like this was worst case scenario, and the fact that we're only losing 10 to 20, Paul, it sounds like you might still be up, it is actually pretty good.
Yeah, I totally agree. Could not have said it any better myself.
Love it. Jim, thanks for submitting. Like Paul said, it's all out of love. We want to take any learning experiences that we can from scenarios and apply them moving forward. So appreciate you giving us all the information there. And hopefully the auctions that are still active do well in their last couple hours/days. Moving right along, I'm a little bit out of breath from ranting right there, but we got Michael C. says, thanks for all that you are doing, Paul. I'm a couple months into returning to the hobby and would have been an epic fail had I not found your content. My buddy who is joining me on this journey asked me about a misprint card in his collection. I could not find info, and we went to a card show with no luck trying to gather any advice on where we can find this information. Got a couple photos attached. Paul, I'll let you take things here from Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I appreciate that. Love the kind words. Honestly, like, this is why we do what we do, like to be part of this community where we get such love. And I know that sounds cheesy, but because we want to provide value. That's what we're constantly trying to do. So it's nice to have that be noticed. Appreciate that, Michael. So this actually, I mean, you might hear different things from different people. Based on my experience, like this would be considered like a miscut, not a misprint. And I don't mean to be, I don't mean to catch you on a different phrase there, but it actually is different in the sports card hobby, because a misprint would probably imply that there's something that was printed on the card that wasn't supposed to be on the card, like an error. Whereas this just looks like a manufacturing flaw, where as it was going through the manufacturing process after being printed, it was going through the cutter. it got snagged on something and didn't cut correctly. So it's not like worth anything more. Whereas like I think that might be where your buddy is. I think sometimes like people like your friend and all of us really, like we grew up with error cards, right? And sometimes an error card can be worth a lot more than the actual reprint, like correction of the card. I don't believe this is one of those cases. This is actually just one of those cases where it's like, just crappy production miscut the card. So for example, if you were to grade this at a grading company, they would give you some kind of modification for it being a miscut. I mean, it might get like a 1, but it would be like a 1 miscut or a 2, because maybe there's no surface flaws. Maybe there's no corner damage, those kinds of things. They have to still go by their grading standards. I mean, the reality is this card is worth nothing. Because not only because of the player, but also because of the miscut. So this card is like worth absolutely nothing. It's interesting to look at as like wow, this is, it has some sort of it has some sort of value to people in the hobby to look at it and go, holy crap, what a horrible production run that made this happen. But in terms of like actual value, without the miscut, I'm just looking at the front and the back and the corners and the, edges and things like that. Like it's probably like a 6, even if it is like a perfect centering cut of the card. So it's probably like a 6 miscut at a grading company, or maybe less of so it would put you at like it's a nothing. It's a negative grading fee value. It's like the value of this card is like negative $19 basically, in my opinion. So that's my breakdown of this. But definitely, Michael, stay subscribed, ask more questions about how to, how we can help you make money flipping cards, or just avoid mistakes. And maybe we helped you with this. avoiding a mistake of actually getting it graded. I would not get this card graded. I would just, this is funny, keep it on your desk or whatever as kind of like an interesting piece of artwork. I don't know. That's the best I got for you, brother. Connor, if you think I can add any more value, let me know. But hopefully that answers Michael's question.
Yeah, I think it's a good breakdown, Michael. Thank you for submitting the question here. We're glad that you're back in the hobby, and we're really glad that you're finding value from the content. Like Paul's mentioning, we want to help in whatever way we can, so keep those questions coming at nooffseason.com/ask. Rounding off the show, we got a fun one, Paul. It's a bit of a trade action coming from Sam P, a.k.a. Color Match Collect. Give me a second to read through this, guys. It says, this is more of a story than a question, but I do have a question at the end. About a month ago, I traded up into a Jackson Holiday Superfractor Auto. After a solid spring and torrent start to the season, his value was holding steady and he was performing. Still, I couldn't help but notice the interest was not as high for such a sought-after card. After all, it is an insert Superfractor and a sticker auto. Trying to move it in a sell for cash deal was a challenge, and I couldn't help but feel the weight of such a large card in my portfolio that was holding me up from making other plays and the risk, God forbid, that he were to get hurt. I decided to move out of the Holiday and a Harper, that is a Bryce Harper Kaboom, for a number of valuable pieces that each lined up into future selling markers and spread out my risk. Remarkably, this all happened 2 days before Holiday's call up. This is what the trade consisted of in return for the Jackson Holiday that he's referring to, as well as the Bryce Harper Kaboom. It'd be a 2023 Panini Prism Victor Wembanyama Ruby Wave rookie card, and that's a BGS 9.5. A 2023 Jackson Holiday Chrome Prospect Green Grass Refractor Auto out of 99. That's a PSA 9. A 2020 Donruss Choice Black Gold Anthony Edwards rookie numbered 1 out of 8 jersey match. A 2020 Select Joe Burrow White Prism out of 35 super short print rookie card in BGS 9.5. That's a premier level color match. And a 2020 numbered 1 out of 25 Anthony Edwards Panini tie-dye game worn plus $200 of cash. Looking back at this, I couldn't be more relieved with Holiday's rocky start. I will be super careful in the future when trading up into bigger cards to make sure that there is significant demand for that card so that it can be moved. I have the Holiday on auction, and I plan to move or cross over the rest here in the next few months. I would love to hear your thoughts on if I should look to move the Wembanyama now or at a later marker. It says, P.S. Thank you for your tips on the Malik Neighbors sell recommendation, as well as the Sam Darnold flyer play. I made about 25 to 50% returns on both of those plays. Looking forward to using some of the new premium member tools soon. Best Color Match Collect. And he attached a photo, which Paul has up right now if you're watching the show, of the actual trade here. Paul, I'm excited for you to dive into this one and how you think he did. And also, of course, Sam, thanks for the kind words on winning with Malik Neighbors. And Sam Darnold, baby. Shout out to the flyer play. But Paul, I'll let you take things away.
Connor's humble. That was his flyer play from one of our Sports Card Strategy Show episodes. So props to Connor on the Sam Darnold flyer play, and great execution, Color Match Collect, to quick flip that and make 25 to 50% returns on both plays. That's great. Happy that the Neighbors worked out for you as well on the sell alert. Connor and I collaborated on that, but a lot of credit to Connor Barnett on those. So that's what we're here for, Color Match. What I love about this is this is a great representation of a lot of what's going on in the hobby that we don't really get a chance to talk about a lot. This is from Veriswap. So he basically traded 2 cards for 5 cards and $200. And so the total card value on what he was giving up was estimated at $6,350. The total card value that he was getting back was $5,950 at the time. And thus he needed to get some cash back to kind of make it even. So he got $200 cash back, all in based on Veriswap's analysis of this. He lost the trade, but in my opinion, I actually think he won the trade because he got out of 2 cards that he was worried about, right? So I'm going to color match. First thing I'm going to do is validate that I think your sense of relief, you should enjoy that, because I do think the fact that you traded up into this Holiday one of one auto that's not a first. It's insert one of one, and it is an auto. But to your point, yes, it's a sticker auto. It's not like a card that sells itself like the first auto. It really doesn't. So it's a risky one. And the Bryce Harper Kaboom, I mean, I think there's a limited market for that because I think that, Bryce Harper's older. He's a winner. He's one of the top players in the game. He's contending for MVP awards and World Series and things like that. But those things don't necessarily always drive card prices in baseball as much as hype around prospects. And it is a unlicensed Panini Kaboom. So it's an unlicensed Panini card and it's in an SGC 9. So it's just not, there's just a lot of flaws with both cards. So I think you did well to get out of those cards to get you got some more desirable cards and some cash. So now your strategy, your question is basically, what do you do? Well, you're right to have the holiday on auction right now. You definitely need to get rid of that card. It's not a first. While it is an auto green grass refractor, low serial numbered, it's not a first, and it is a PSA 9. So there's flaws in that card. And now, like we all know, you got to get rid of Jackson Holiday cards now, because it's gonna take him going on a tear for his cards to go back up again. The Wemby, the Burrow that are in the BGS slabs, I wouldn't hate the idea of you cracking those out and submitting them to PSA, because you do have time before I would recommend even selling that Wemby or that Burrow, which I would look to sell the Burrow in September and the Wemby in October. And the Ruby Wave, if that does get a PSA 10, that's going to be a card that's going to help you easily, I guess, for lack of a better term, recoup back this 6350. And then you've got the Anthony Edwards, which is a pretty sick card. I would actually look to list that during these upcoming NBA playoffs. So I think that answers all of your questions. I think that the Edwards Panini die cut game worn jersey match, I'm guessing you're not asking about getting this graded because you've looked at it and it might not be in the best condition to get graded. So I get that. I still might consider getting it graded just so that it's easier to sell because people know what it is. I would definitely play up the fact that these are jersey match serial numbers, and definitely play up the fact that that's game worn. Great places to sell those kinds of cards, Connor, are card shows. So I know I said a minute ago, list them during the upcoming NBA playoffs. I might tweak that a little bit. And if you can get to a card show, it's a shame that the Minnesota card show is this weekend because it's going to be hard for you to get to. I don't know where you are color match geographically. If you happen to live in Minnesota or have a way to try and move one of these cards to someone who that is at the Minnesota card show that can do an in-person transaction and then validate that you'll ship these cards to that person. Obviously, moving these types of low serial numbered, jersey match serial numbered, game worn stuff at card shows is what I would recommend. The Dallas show is also in May. Connor, Lefty, and I will be there. That would be another great show to move the Ant-Man cards at. And then, of course, the National, even though it's in July, Anthony Edwards is going to be playing in the Olympics in July. And he's just a player that should be desirable for the foreseeable future. So anyway, I'm trying to throw a little some tips in there about how you could move these and what points you could move them at. Those are my thoughts. I think overall you did well. So I want to validate that. And thank you for asking the question. It's a very compelling question because, as you can tell from my answer, nothing's clear cut about what to do with all of these. And it's the waters in the hobby are muddy. And so thank you for bringing your muddy waters to us so that we can purify them. and get you some nice filtered drinking water to chug down some profits.
Love it. Yeah, I think that's a great breakdown. We were going through this prior to the show, trying to figure out what exactly we thought the winner of this was, but I think you nailed it on the head there. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Definitely keep us posted with what moves you try to do, how you get them sold, and if you end up believing that you won the trade there. So thanks for the submission from Sam P. Be sure to keep them coming at nooffseason.com/ask. Paul, that's going to wrap it up for our questions today. Of course, again, I want to thank all of our fantastic members for the support, for the questions that invoke thought-provoking conversations, which we love. So I just thought it was a fantastic show. Thank you guys for all the support. Thanks for the questions. Keep them coming. Paul, what else you got?
I just want to ask one thing, sort of a poll here. For those of you watching this, I'm going to take you as some of our more loyal subscribers to nooffseason.com. So I want to know from you, what would you find the most value in if we could add it to the website for premium members? And eventually maybe we can do all of these things, but what would keep you coming back as a paid subscriber? Would it be free grading from a company like CGC? Would it be the ability to enter your own cards into the formula and see what those look like in our using our formula, but the ability to enter in your own cards? Would it be or would it be like a dashboard where you could submit the cards that you already have, keep track of your current inventory, buying and selling? So basically keep track of your own profits and losses within your member dashboard. So 3 very different yet all valuable. I would like for you to rank them. If you want to email me at paul@nooffseason.com, just let me know your thoughts on that. This is not necessarily a request for any and all features, although if you do have something that you think is reasonable, low lift for us to add that we haven't added yet, definitely would take open-ended suggestions. Ultimately, we want to continue to bring you guys the most value without overcomplicating things for your daily life. So we appreciate all of your support. And I'd like to hit you with the rock music right now with Connor's permission. Connor, do I have your permission?
Let's do it. See y'all Monday, Wednesday, and Friday next week.